Welcome to our review time. I'm so excited about the reading that we've done this last week. Well, Moses is preparing the children of Israel to enter into the land of Canaan. And what he does is so important. He reminds them of something we saw from the very early stages of the Bible. There are only two ways of walking in life outside of Eden. So he reminds them the path of obedience. Well, God desires to be with his people, but it's conditional. If you're obedient, man, he will bless your socks off. But if you're disobedient, the consequences far outweigh the blessings of obedience because they're so detrimental to us personally, they're detrimental to us culturally as a people, and for the next generation. So what he does is he establishes the role of Bible literacy as a core value in Israel's culture. So one of the first things he establishes after he records Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, he establishes a regulation that's going to help them, that's going to assist them. And so he says that you need to read out loud the entire book of the law to the people one time every 7 years to give everyone access to their story. And so why is this so important? Because if you remember, he is writing to this new generation of Israelites who need to know who God is, what is theology, needs to know who they are, what is their purpose in life, and so on. But what is their identity? Their identity is based on what God has done in the past, and what he's doing in the present with Israel is conducive to their understanding of how they fit into his story. Well, sadly, they don't get that. But that's the goal and design for Bible literacy. Not only that, he commits their wilderness journey in a song. So what you see is he's developing into an understanding that why people need to be people of memory. Well, one of the things we see at the conclusion of our reading is the transition from the Exodus era into the conquest era. And it begins with two stories. Again, compounded the whole idea that there are only two ways of living life outside of Eden. So first we're introduced to a foreigner. Her name is Rahab. Now this is the beginning of Abraham's promise that he's been given, that fulfillment, that they will be a blessing to all the families of the earth. So here she is. She's the first part of the families that God is bringing in. So what happens is you see that she has little or very little access to who God is. It's just basically based on what she's heard over the last few years as these people have congregated out in the wilderness and how God has incredibly met their needs in the midst. So she's heard these stories as they've rolled in from the desert, and it's intrigued her because she doesn't have a God like that. She doesn't have a God who enters into the messiness and brokenness of life to provide so clearly for his people. So when the spies show up to her house, she's like, good deal. I'm making an allegiance change. And so she makes an allegiance from the gods of the people of Canaan to the living God. And she illustrates that by hanging that cord outside the window of her household. And so we see as a result of her faith in the living God, because faith comes by hearing and hearing by the words of God, that she and her entire family are rescued when everyone else perishes in Jericho. Well, then you have a foil story demonstrating the other way of living. And this story is told by someone who has total access. I mean, he's been raised in the wilderness. He's seen fire come down from heaven. He's eaten the miraculous manna. Every single day he's eaten quail. I mean, he's seen Moses speak to rock and drink to deal with his thirst miraculously. So he's experienced all these things in the wilderness. So what you can see is you can be so familiar with the activity of God and not have faith. So what does he demonstrate? He demonstrates what does it look like to walk in disobedience to what you know to be true about God. So what you have is you have the faith of a foreigner, Rahab, then you have the unbelief of a family, and you have Achan also because he knows what God has said. He knows that God keeps his word. So when God says, don't take the plunder from Jericho, he thinks he can do so and he can hide it. And he does so, and he is called out. So what you see is Rahab, because of her faith, she experiences the rescue or the saving of her whole household. But you have Achan, in response to his unbelief, his disobedience to God, is it costs not only himself, but it costs his entire household. So what you see here that neither faith nor unbelief are passive. Something to think about.